The Valkyrie had ruled their corner of the galaxy for more than 300 years. They were tall creatures, with hard shells covering their bodies, 4 arms, and eyes that could see in complete darkness. Their ships were beautiful and deadly, made of a crystal-like metal that glowed with soft blue light. They had conquered 17 star systems and destroyed any species that refused to bow before them. Admiral Zyrith Khan was the most famous warrior in the Valkyrie supremacy. He stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and looked out at the stars with pride. His ship was enormous, nearly 2 kilometers long, armed with plasma cannons that could melt through any armor. Behind him, 100 officers worked at their stations, monitoring the vast territory under his control. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, a younger Valkyrie named Threll, "we have received a transmission from the border region. The humans are requesting permission to settle in the Vega corridor." Zyrith made a clicking sound with his mandibles. It was the Valkyrie way of laughing. "Humans," he said, speaking the word like it was something disgusting. "I remember when our scouts first found their little planet. They were still fighting each other with primitive weapons. They had not even left their own moon. That was 60 years ago, Admiral. Our intelligence reports say they have expanded rapidly. They now control 12 colony worlds." 12 worlds, Zyrith repeated. He was not impressed. "We control 17 systems, each with dozens of planets. What are 12 worlds compared to our empire?" Threll shifted nervously. He had seen the reports that Zyrith had ignored. Human technology was advancing at a speed that made no sense. They had gone from burning dead plants for energy to building fusion reactors in less than 2 centuries. They had cracked faster than light travel only 40 years ago, and already their ships were traveling through space at speeds that matched Valkyrie vessels. But Threll knew better than to argue with his admiral. Zyrith was proud and cruel, and he did not like to be questioned. "What should we tell the humans, Admiral?" Zyrith turned away from the window. His 4 arms were folded across his chest, and his dark eyes showed nothing but contempt. "Tell them nothing. Send the 3rd Patrol Squadron to the Vega corridor. Any human ships they find are to be destroyed immediately. We do not negotiate with insects." The order was sent. 3 days later, the 3rd Patrol Squadron encountered a small convoy of human ships near the Vega corridor. There were 5 vessels in total, none of them armed. They were transport ships carrying colonists to a new world, families who had spent their entire savings to start fresh lives among the stars. The Valkyrie ships surrounded them and opened fire without warning. 12,000 humans died in less than 10 minutes. The transport ships had no weapons, no shields strong enough to stop plasma fire. They tried to run, but Valkyrie ships were faster. They tried to surrender, but no one answered their calls. Men, women, and children burned in the cold vacuum of space, while Valkyrie pilots celebrated their easy victory. When news of the massacre reached Earth, the entire planet went silent. People gathered around screens in their homes, in public squares, in offices and schools, watching footage recovered from the destroyed ships. They saw families huddled together in their final moments. They saw children crying for parents who could not save them. They saw the Valkyrie ships flying through the debris field, shooting at escape pods just to make sure no one survived. The United Earth government sent an emergency transmission to the Valkyrie supremacy, demanding an explanation. Ambassador Lisa Morgan, one of humanity's most respected diplomats, personally recorded the message. Her voice was calm but heavy with grief. "This is Ambassador Lisa Morgan, of the United Earth Council. 3 days ago, your military forces attacked and destroyed 5 unarmed civilian transport ships in the Vega corridor. 12,000 of our people are dead, including 4,000 children. We demand an immediate explanation and full accountability for this act of aggression. Humanity has never shown hostility toward your species. We have only ever sought peaceful coexistence. Please respond." The Valkyrie response came 6 hours later. It was not from a diplomat or a government official. It was from Admiral Zyrith Khan himself. "Human ambassador," the message began. "The Vega corridor belongs to the Valkyrie supremacy. Your people entered our territory without permission. They were dealt with accordingly. If you send more ships, they will meet the same fate. The Velkhori do not negotiate with lesser species. Accept your place in the galaxy, or be destroyed. Lisa Morgan watched the message with her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She had spent her entire career building bridges between different peoples. She believed that communication and understanding could solve any conflict. But as she listened to Zyrith's words, she felt something cold settle in her chest. She turned to her aide, a young man named Danny Park. "Get me a secure line to Fleet Admiral Patricia Hayes." "Ma'am?" "Now, Danny." The call connected within minutes. Patricia Hayes appeared on the screen. Her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her face carved from stone. She was 63 years old and had served in the Earth military for over 4 decades. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt, put down rebellions on Mars, and commanded the first human warship to travel beyond the solar system. "I saw the message," Patricia said before Lisa could speak. "Patricia, I know you and I have disagreed about military expansion in the past, but, Ambassador, with all due respect, we are past the point of disagreement." Patricia's voice was quiet but hard as iron. "Those were our people. Our families. Our children. The Velkhori killed them and then laughed about it." Lisa closed her eyes. "What are you proposing?" "The first expeditionary force is ready. 240 ships, including the new Titangent-class battleships. We have been preparing for something like this for years. Lisa, we hoped we would never need to use them." Patricia paused, and when she spoke again, there was something ancient and terrible in her voice. "We were wrong. The Council will never approve an offensive action. They already have." Emergency session ended an hour ago. The vote was unanimous. Patricia leaned forward. "Humanity has just declared war on the Velkhori supremacy, and I intend to show them exactly what that means." The transmission ended. Lisa Morgan sat alone in her office, staring at the blank screen. Outside her window, the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It looked like fire. It looked like the beginning of something that could not be stopped. Across the galaxy, in the cold darkness between stars, the ships of the United Earth Navy began to move. They traveled in silence, running without lights, hidden from Velkhori sensors by technology that the aliens had never imagined possible. At the head of the fleet flew the USS Ironclad, the largest and most powerful warship humanity had ever built. And on its bridge, Commander Kevin Moore sat in his command chair, looking at a photograph of his wife and daughters, knowing that he might never see them again. But he also knew something else, something that burned in his heart like a star. The Velkhori had made a mistake. They had seen humanity as weak, as primitive, as insects to be crushed. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Kessler Belt was a vast field of rocks and ice floating at the edge of Velkhori territory. It was a place of shadows and silence, where the light of distant stars barely reached. The Velkhori had never bothered to explore it properly. There was nothing there worth taking, no planets to conquer, no resources to harvest. It was just empty space, filled with drifting stones. They did not know that humanity had been watching them from this darkness for weeks. Commander Kevin Moore stood on the bridge of the USS Ironclad and studied the tactical display in front of him. The ship was running silent, all systems powered down to minimum levels, hiding among the asteroids like a predator waiting for its prey. Around him, his crew worked in near darkness, speaking in whispers even though there was no one to hear them. Kevin was 42 years old, with short brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the temples. He had a square jaw and tired eyes that had seen too much death in his lifetime. Before joining the Navy, he had been a construction worker on Mars, building homes for colonists who dreamed of starting new lives on the Red Planet. He understood what it meant to build something from nothing. He also understood what it meant to have everything taken away. His wife Megan had sent him a message before he left Earth. She had tried to be strong, but he could see the fear in her eyes. Their daughters, Emma and Sophie, had cried and begged him not to go. He had held them tight and promised to come home. He did not know if he could keep that promise. "Captain," said Lieutenant Katie Turner from the sensor station. She was young, only 26, with red hair tied back in a ponytail. She had graduated top of her class at the Naval Academy and had been assigned to the Ironclad as her first real posting. I am picking up movement near the outer marker. 12 ships, small ones. They match the profile of Velkori Raptor-class patrol craft. Kevin nodded slowly. They are looking for us. Yes, sir. They are scanning the asteroid field, but their sensors cannot penetrate the interference. They do not know we are here. Kevin looked at the display again. 12 ships. Small, fast, armed with plasma cannons and light shields. They were dangerous to civilian transports and unprotected freighters. But against a Titangent-class battleship, they were nothing more than target practice. But Kevin did not feel satisfaction at this thought. He felt only a heavy sadness that sat in his chest like a stone. Those ships were crewed by living beings. They had families, perhaps. They had lives and dreams and hopes for the future, and in a few minutes, Kevin would order their deaths. This is what war does, he thought. It turns ordinary people into killers. Captain, said Communications Officer Chris Thompson from his station. The lead Velkori ship is broadcasting on an open channel. They are demanding that any vessels in the area identify themselves and surrender for processing. Processing, Kevin repeated quietly. He knew what that word meant. The Velkori did not take prisoners. They took slaves. Species they conquered were broken down and used as labor, worked until their bodies gave out, and then discarded like garbage. Put them on screen, he said. The main view screen flickered to life, showing the face of a Velkori commander. The alien was smaller than Kevin had expected. With a narrow head and mandibles that clicked rapidly as it spoke, its compound eyes reflected the lights of its own bridge, making them look like pools of oil. Unknown vessel, the Velkori said. You have entered Velkori space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. If you resist, you will be destroyed. If you attempt to flee, you will be destroyed. Compliance is your only option. Kevin stood up from his command chair and faced the screen. He was not a man who gave speeches. He was not a politician or a diplomat. He was a sailor, plain and simple, who had been given a job to do. This is Commander Kevin Moore of the United Earth Navy, commanding the USS Ironclad, he said. His voice was calm and steady, without anger or hatred. 3 weeks ago, your people killed 12,000 of our civilians. Men, women, and children, who had done nothing wrong. They were not soldiers. They were not a threat. They were just people trying to find a new home. The Velkori commander made a clicking sound. They were trespassers. They were dealt with as all trespassers are dealt with. Your species should have learned your place. We know our place, Kevin said. Our place is among the stars, just like everyone else. But you took something from us. You took people we loved, and now we are here to take something from you. One ship? The Velkori laughed. A harsh, chattering sound. You threaten the supremacy with one ship? You humans truly are as foolish as we believed. Kevin did not smile. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at the alien commander with eyes that held no fear and no mercy. I am not threatening you, he said. I am telling you what is going to happen. In 60 seconds, my weapons officer is going to open fire on your squadron. Your ships will be destroyed. None of you will survive. This is not a battle. This is a message. You dare. 45 seconds. The Velkori commander's mandibles stopped clicking. For the first time, something like uncertainty crossed his face. You are bluffing. Your species does not have weapons capable of 30 seconds. All ships, attack formation. Destroy that vessel immediately. Kevin turned to Lieutenant Commander Scott Henderson at the weapons station. Scott was a big man with a shaved head and arms covered in tattoos from his time in the Marine Corps. He had lost a brother on one of the transport ships. Light them up, Kevin said. Scott pressed a button on his console. Along the length of the Ironclad, 60 railgun batteries came online, their magnetic coils humming with barely contained power. The system targeting computers locked onto the 12 Valkyrie ships in less than a second. Then, the guns fired. Railguns did not shoot energy beams or glowing plasma bolts like Valkyrie weapons. They shot solid metal slugs, chunks of tungsten the size of a man's fist, accelerated to a fraction of light speed by magnetic fields. There was no flash, no warning, just 12 streams of death crossing the void in the blink of an eye. The Valkyrie had never faced kinetic weapons before. Their shields were designed to absorb and disperse energy, to turn plasma and laser fire into harmless heat. But kinetic impactors did not care about energy absorption. They simply punched through shields like they were not there, tore through armor like paper, and kept going out the other side. The first 3 Valkyrie ships exploded before they could even fire. The next 4 tried to evade, but the ironclad's targeting systems were too fast, too precise. They died in clouds of fire and debris. The last 5 attempted to retreat, their engines flaring as they tried to escape back to friendly space. They made it less than 1,000 kilometers before the railguns caught them. The entire battle lasted less than 10 seconds. When it was over, the Valkyrie patrol squadron had ceased to exist. All that remained were drifting chunks of metal and crystal, glowing faintly in the darkness. On the bridge of the ironclad, no one celebrated. No one cheered. They simply sat in silence, understanding that this was only the beginning. Kevin Moore returned to his command chair and pressed a button on the armrest. "Send a message to Admiral Zyrith Khan," he said. "Tell him that was our introduction, and tell him we are coming for him next." Admiral Zyrith Khan watched the footage for the 7th time. And still, he could not believe what he was seeing. 12 of his ships, crewed by experienced warriors, destroyed in less than 10 seconds by a single human vessel. The recording had been recovered from a damaged probe that had been observing the patrol squadron from a safe distance. It showed everything in terrible detail. "Run it again," he ordered. Threll pressed a button on his console, and the footage played once more. The human ship appeared out of the darkness, like a monster rising from deep water. It was massive, far larger than any vessel the Valkyrie had seen humans build before. Its hull was dark, gray, almost black, covered in angles and flat surfaces that made it hard to track with sensors. Along its sides, rows of weapons bristled like the spines of some ancient beast. Then the weapons fired. There were no energy beams, no glowing projectiles, nothing that Valkyrie sensors could track or predict. Just 12 streams of invisible death that crossed the void faster than thought. The patrol ships simply came apart, their shields and armor offering no protection at all. "What are those weapons?" Zyrith demanded for the 10th time. "Kinetic accelerators," Threll answered quietly. "They fire solid projectiles at extreme velocities. Our historical records show that primitive species often use such weapons before developing energy technology. We abandoned them thousands of years ago because they were inefficient." "Inefficient?" Zyrith slammed all 4 of his fists against the console in front of him. "They destroyed 12 ships in 10 seconds. How is that inefficient?" Threll did not answer. He had learned long ago that when the Admiral was angry, silence was the safest response. Zyrith turned away from the screen and walked to the observation window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. The same stars that had watched over Valkyrie conquests for 300 years. He had never lost a battle. He had never retreated from an enemy. His name was spoken with fear and respect throughout the galaxy. But now, for the first time in his long career, he felt something unfamiliar creeping into his heart. It was not fear, he told himself. It was simply caution. "Mobilize the Second Fleet," he said finally. "All ships. I want every vessel we can spare assembled at the Kessler Belt within 2 days." Threll's eyes widened. "Admiral, the Second Fleet is 80 warships. We would be leaving our core territories undefended. Do you think these humans will stop at one attack?" Zyrith turned to face his subordinate. "They sent a message, Threll. They told us they are coming. If we do not crush them now, while we know where they are, they will strike at us again and again." "Yes, Admiral." Threll began entering commands into his console. "I will have the fleet assembled within 36 hours. Good. And Threll? Good. Yes, Admiral? I will lead the attack personally. Prepare my shuttle. 2 days later, the Valkyrie Second Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kessler Belt. It was the largest military force the Supremacy had assembled in nearly a century, 80 warships flying in perfect formation, their crystal hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. 4 massive dreadnoughts formed the center of the fleet, each one capable of destroying a planet on its own. 2 carriers held thousands of fighter craft, ready to launch at a moment's notice. And at the head of the formation flew the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Xyrith's flagship, the most powerful ship in the Valkyrie Navy. Xyrith stood on his command deck and surveyed his forces with pride. This was what the Valkyrie supremacy truly was. Not a single patrol squadron caught by surprise, but an overwhelming wave of destruction that no enemy could resist. "Sensor sweep," he ordered. "Find the human vessel." Officers worked at their stations, scanning the asteroid field for any sign of the enemy. Minutes passed. The sensors showed nothing but rocks, and ice, and empty space. "Admiral," Threll said slowly, "I am not detecting the human ship, but I am picking up some unusual readings deeper in the belt. The interference is making it hard to get clear data." "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures. Faint, but definitely artificial. They could be trying to hide among the asteroids." Xyrith smiled, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "They are afraid. They know they cannot face us in open battle, so they hide like prey animals." He raised one of his arms and pointed toward the asteroid field. "All ships, advance. Spread formation, flush them out, and destroy them." The Second Fleet moved forward, their engines pushing them deeper into the Kessler Belt. The asteroids grew thicker around them, chunks of rock and ice tumbling slowly through the void. It was difficult to navigate, but Valkyrie pilots were the best in the galaxy. They wove between the obstacles with practiced ease, and then the sensors went insane. "Contact!" Threll shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief. Multiple contacts emerging from the asteroid field. "Count is..." "Admiral, I am reading over 200 ships." Xyrith's blood turned to ice. "That is impossible. The humans do not have that many ships." "They are real, Admiral. 240 confirmed signatures. They were hiding among the asteroids, running silent. We did not see them until they wanted us to see them." The darkness of space suddenly lit up with the blue-white glow of fusion engines as the human fleet revealed itself. They came from every direction, rising from behind asteroids, emerging from craters, appearing where there had been nothing moments before. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers, carriers, all of them armed, all of them ready for war. At the center of the formation, the USS Ironclad hung in space like a great metal predator, and beside it, 3 more ships of the same class, each one as massive and heavily armed as the first. The Valkyrie fleet had walked into a trap. A new transmission appeared on the view screen. This time, it was not the human commander from before. It was a woman with silver hair and eyes like winter storms. Her uniform was decorated with medals and symbols of rank that even Xyrith recognized as belonging to someone of great authority. "Admiral Xyrith Khan," the woman said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was something in it that made Xyrith's skin crawl. "My name is Fleet Admiral Patricia Hayes, commanding officer of the United Earth First Expeditionary Force. I believe you received our earlier message." Xyrith found his voice. "You think to frighten me with numbers? We are the Valkyrie. We have conquered 17 star systems. We have crushed species far more powerful than yours." Patricia Hayes smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No kindness. It was the smile of someone who had already made their decision and was simply waiting for the rest of the universe to catch up. "You have conquered species who did not fight back," she said. "You have bullied the weak and slaughtered the innocent. You murdered our children and laughed about it." She leaned forward slightly. "Let me tell you something about humanity, Admiral. We do not break easily. We do not surrender. And when someone hurts our families..." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was hard as steel. "We burn their world to ashes and salt the earth so nothing ever grows there again." The transmission ended, And then the shooting started. The Battle of Kessler's Vale began with silence. For one heartbeat, the two fleets hung in space, separated by only a few thousand kilometers, close enough to see each other's running lights. Then the void between them erupted into violence. The human fleet fired first. 240 ships opened up with everything they had, filling the darkness with streams of railgun fire and swarms of missiles. The attack came from every direction at once, a storm of metal and death that turned the battlefield into a hurricane of destruction. Commander Kevin Moore gripped the arms of his command chair as the ironclad lurched forward into the chaos. Around him, his crew worked with desperate efficiency, calling out targets and damage reports in voices tight with controlled fear. "Enemy dreadnought at bearing 270. Katie Turner shouted from the sensor station. "It is charging its main weapon. Henderson, put 3 rounds into its reactor core," Kevin ordered. Scott Henderson did not hesitate. His fingers danced across the weapons console, and 3 railgun batteries rotated to track the massive Velcori ship. The guns fired in rapid succession, each shot punching through the dreadnought's shields like needles through cloth. The 3rd round found the reactor, and the ship vanished in a ball of white fire that briefly outshone the stars. "Target destroyed," Scott reported. "Find the next one." The Velcori fleet was falling apart. Their ships had been designed to fight enemies who used energy weapons, who followed predictable patterns, who could be tracked and intercepted. They had no defense against kinetic rounds that moved faster than thought. Their shields, so effective against plasma and lasers, were useless against simple chunks of metal moving at relativistic speeds. But the Velcori were not cowards. They were warriors who had spent their entire lives training for battle. Even as their ships exploded around them, they fought back with everything they had. Plasma fire raked across the ironclad's hull, melting through outer armor, plating, and triggering alarms across the ship. A lucky shot from a Velcori destroyer hit the port engine cluster, killing 12 crew members instantly and crippling the ship's maneuverability. "Damage report," Kevin demanded. "We have lost engines 2 and 3 on the port side," Chris Thompson called out. "Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Damage control teams are responding. We are down to 60% thrust. Can we still fight?" "Yes, sir. Weapons are at full capacity." "Then keep fighting." Across the battlefield, the human fleet was taking losses of its own. The destroyer, USS Montgomery, took a direct hit from a Velcori dreadnought's main cannon and broke apart in a cascade of explosions. The cruiser USS Sacramento was swarmed by Velcori fighters and torn to pieces despite her desperate point defense fire. Good ships, crewed by good people, dying in the cold darkness between stars. But for every human ship that fell, 10 Velcori ships burned. Admiral Patricia Hayes watched the battle from the bridge of her flagship, the USS Constitution. She had spent 40 years preparing for a war she hoped would never come. She had built ships, trained crews, developed weapons that no alien species had ever faced. And now, watching her fleet tear through the Velcori like wolves through sheep, she felt no satisfaction. She only felt tired. "Admiral," her aide said quietly, "the Eternal Dominion is trying to break through our lines. It looks like Admiral Zyrith is attempting to escape." Patricia's expression did not change. "Signal the ironclad. Tell Commander Moore to intercept. It is time to end this." On the ironclad, Kevin received the order and felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. The Eternal Dominion was the largest ship in the Velcori fleet, heavily armored and armed with enough firepower to challenge even a Titangent-class battleship. Taking it on alone was suicide, but then he thought about those 12,000 civilians. He thought about the families who would never see their loved ones again. He thought about his own daughters, sleeping safely in their beds back on Earth, and he knew that he would do anything to keep them safe. "Helm, intercept course on the Eternal Dominion," he ordered. "All hands, prepare for close combat." The ironclad turned and accelerated toward the fleeing Velcori flagship, her damaged engines screaming in protest. Behind her, the battle raged on. But Kevin's focus had narrowed to a single target. Zyrith saw the human ship approaching and felt something he had never experienced before. It was fear. Pure and simple, the primal terror of a predator realizing that it had become prey. His fleet was dying around him. His dreadnoughts were burning. His fighters were being swatted out of space like insects. "All weapons! Target that ship!" he screamed. "Destroy it! Destroy it now!" The Eternal Dominion opened fire with everything it had: plasma cannons, missile batteries, point defense lasers, all of them focusing on the approaching human vessel. The space between them became a wall of fire. But the ironclad did not stop. She pushed through the barrage, her armor absorbing hit after hit, her crew fighting to keep her systems running even as sections of the ship were torn away by enemy fire. She was bleeding atmosphere and losing crew members by the dozen, but she kept coming. "Henderson," Kevin said quietly, "charge the Helios cannon." The Helios cannon was an experimental weapon, a directed energy projector that channeled the power of a contained stellar fragment. It ran through the spine of the ship like a column of captured sunlight, and it had never been fired in combat before. No one knew exactly what would happen when it was unleashed. "Helios is charging," Scott reported. 60%. 70. 80. The ironclad shuddered as another plasma blast tore through her secondary hull. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Somewhere deep in the ship, a reactor began to fail. 90%. 95. Xyrith watched the human ship closing the distance and saw something glowing in its center. A light that grew brighter and brighter, like a star being born in the heart of the vessel. "What is that?" he whispered. "Helios fully charged," Scott said. Kevin Moore looked at the Eternal Dominion one last time. He thought about all the species the Valkyrie had conquered, all the lives they had destroyed, all the children they had killed. "Fire," he said. The Helios cannon released its payload. A beam of concentrated solar plasma crossed the void between the two ships. A lance of artificial sunlight that burned hotter than the core of a star. It struck the Eternal Dominion amidships, and for a moment, the Valkyrie flagship seemed to glow from within. Then it came apart. The explosion was visible from every ship on the battlefield. A burst of light so bright that it overwhelmed sensors and blinded cameras. When it faded, there was nothing left of the Eternal Dominion but a cloud of expanding gas and glowing debris. Admiral Xyrith Khan, conqueror of 17 star systems, was dead. The remaining Valkyrie ships saw their flagship die, and their will to fight died with it. Some tried to surrender. Some tried to flee. None of them succeeded. The human fleet was thorough and merciless, hunting down every ship that had participated in the massacre. When the last Valkyrie vessel had been destroyed, silence fell over the battlefield. The guns went quiet. The engines cooled. And the survivors looked out at what they had done. Kevin Moore sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of his bridge, and did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had done a terrible thing for a necessary reason. He felt like a killer, but deep in his heart, beneath the guilt and the grief, he also felt a small, fierce spark of satisfaction. They had come for humanity. And humanity had answered. The battlefield was quiet now. Where once 80 Valkyrie warships had flown in proud formation, there was only debris drifting silently through the void. Broken hulls tumbled slowly through space. Their crystal armor cracked and shattered. Their lights dark forever. Among them floated the remnants of human ships as well. 11 vessels that had given everything in the fight. 2,000 men and women who would never go home. Commander Kevin Moore walked through the damaged corridors of the ironclad, stepping over fallen ceiling panels and around emergency repair teams working to keep the ship alive. His uniform was torn and stained with blood that was not his own. His face was covered in ash and sweat, and his eyes held the hollow look of a man who had seen too much. He stopped at a viewport and looked out at the wreckage. Somewhere in that field of destruction were the remains of the Eternal Dominion. Somewhere out there, the molecules that had once been Admiral Xyrith Kaon were drifting on the solar wind, mixing with the atoms of his crew and his ship until they were indistinguishable from each other. Kevin did not feel triumph. He did not feel revenge. He only felt tired. A hand touched his shoulder, and he turned to find Katie Turner standing behind him. Her face was pale, and there were tear tracks cutting through the dirt on her cheeks. She had lost friends today. They all had. "Captain," she said quietly, Admiral Hayes is requesting your presence on the Constitution. She says there is something she needs you to be part of. Kevin nodded slowly. Have the shuttle prepared. The flight to the Constitution took only a few minutes. Kevin spent the time staring out the window at the debris field, watching chunks of Valkyrie ships spin slowly past. He wondered if any of them had families waiting for them back home. He wondered if any of them had children who would grow up without fathers or mothers. War does not care about such things, he thought. War only takes. The Constitution was less damaged than the ironclad, but she had scars of her own. Plasma burns marked her hull, and several of her weapons pods had been blown away entirely. But she was still flying, still fighting, still carrying her crew home. Kevin found Admiral Patricia Hayes in the communications center, surrounded by officers and technicians preparing recording equipment. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders, and her face showed every one of her 63 years, but her eyes were still sharp, still focused, still burning with purpose. "Commander Moore," she said as he entered. "Thank you for coming. What do you need from me, Admiral?" Patricia gestured toward the recording array. "We are about to send a message to the galaxy. Every species within receiving range will see it. I want you standing beside me when I deliver it." Kevin frowned. "Why me? I am just a ship captain. You are the commander of the ironclad. You fired the shot that killed Admiral Zyreth. You led the charge that broke their fleet." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "The galaxy needs to see that we are not monsters. They need to see that we are ordinary people who were pushed too far. You represent that, Kevin. You are a husband and a father who fought to protect his family. That matters." Kevin thought about arguing. He thought about walking away, about finding a quiet corner where he could grieve in peace. But then he thought about those 12,000 civilians. He thought about the children who had died screaming in the void. He thought about all the other species in the galaxy who might be watching right now, wondering what kind of creatures these humans were. "All right," he said. "I will stand with you." The recording began. Patricia stood before the camera with Kevin at her side, both of them looking into the lens as if they could see every being in the galaxy watching them. "This message is intended for the Galactic Council and all civilizations within receiving range," Patricia began. 3 weeks ago, the Valkyrie Supremacy committed an act of unprovoked murder against 12,000 unarmed human civilians. Men, women, and children who were traveling in peace were killed without warning, without mercy, without reason. She paused, letting the words sink in. "Today, the United Earth Navy responded. The Valkyrie Second Fleet has been destroyed. Admiral Zyreth Kayan, the man who ordered the massacre, is dead. We did not seek this war. We offered peace. We asked for nothing more than the right to exist among the stars. Our offers were rejected. Our pleas were ignored. Our people were murdered." Her voice hardened. "Let this be a message to every empire, every federation, every civilization in this galaxy. Humanity does not want war. We have spent most of our history fighting each other, and we are tired of blood and death. We would rather build than destroy. We would rather create than kill. But we will never, ever allow ourselves to be victimized." She took a step forward, her eyes burning. "If you come to us in peace, you will find no better friends in all the universe. We will share our knowledge, our art, our music, our stories. We will welcome you into our homes and treat you as family. We will stand beside you against any threat and fight for you as we would fight for ourselves." Her voice dropped to something quiet and dangerous. "But if you come to us with violence, if you threaten our families and murder our children, then understand this. We will not forgive. We will not forget. We will find you wherever you hide. We will hunt you across every star and every system. And we will destroy you so completely that future generations will wonder if you ever existed at all." Patricia looked at the camera for a long moment, her face carved from stone. "Humanity has announced itself to the galaxy today. Remember what you have seen. Remember what we are capable of. And ask yourself, before you raise your hand against us, if it is truly worth the price." The recording ended. The lights in the communications center seemed brighter now, sharper. As if the universe itself was paying attention, Kevin let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Do you think they will listen? Patricia turned to look out the viewport at the debris field floating in the darkness. Some will. The wise ones. The ones who understand that power means nothing without wisdom. They will see what we did here, and they will choose peace. And the others? Patricia smiled, but there was no joy in it. The others will learn the same lesson the Valkyrie learned. And they will have no one to blame but themselves. Kevin nodded slowly. He thought about his wife and daughters waiting for him back on Earth. He thought about the home he had built on Mars before the war took him away. He thought about all the things he wanted to do with his life, all the quiet moments he had been denied. I want to go home, he said quietly. You will, Patricia said. We all will. But first, we have work to do. The Valkyrie supremacy is not finished. They still control 17 star systems. And they will want revenge for what we did here today. Then we will be ready for them. Patricia put a hand on his shoulder. Yes, Commander. We will. Outside the viewport, the debris field of the Valkyrie's second fleet drifted silently among the stars. It was a graveyard and a warning. A monument to the price of underestimating humanity. And somewhere in the darkness, on 1,000 different worlds, 1,000 different species watched the human message and felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Fear. Respect. And perhaps, for the wise ones, the first stirrings of hope. Humanity had arrived. The galaxy would never be the same.